What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. I'm Dr. Mike Axler, professor of exercise science, PhD in applied human physiology, 60 plus time marathoner and ultramarathoner, and performance coach. Today, we are going to be talking about something that's increasing in popularity, but definitely still a bit niche. Or is it niche? I don't know. But we are going to be talking about what ultramarathoners and some elites, which we'll talk about later, what they eat both during training and during races. And for all of you who don't know what an ultramarathon is, it is anything over a marathon distance. A marathon is 26.2 miles. It's typically a road race. You just go all in one shot. And an ultramarathon can be anything over that. So they have the 50K, which is 31 miles. They have 50 milers, 100 milers. Now they have 200-mile races and 300-mile races. Crazy. But anyway, I love the sport of ultra running. I've run 20 ultras. Those are some of the medals. I have a bunch of pint glasses and belt buckles and different like blocks of wood and socks and weird stuff like that they give out at ultras. So when I was running a bulk of my ultras for a couple of years, I was running 100-mile weeks. I talked about this in my book that I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning and I'd click go on my watch at 3:58 a.m. and run until 6 a.m. So 2 hours and 2 minutes every day, run between like 12, 13 miles, and I'd do another run in the afternoon, or I would do a lift in the afternoon. And what I noticed from doing this about 7 days a week for 2 years was that I got into great shape, but I was always hungry, always bloated from eating, and always running to the bathroom. And at the end of the day, I would like crash from being just so tired. And I never really zoned in on nutrition as much in my entire life as I did when I was doing this, because I was also strength training 4 days a week. I was doing my PhD. I was very, very, very busy, but it was rewarding. I loved it. And now I get to teach a lot of this stuff in my sports nutrition class. And I train a whole lot of ultra runners as well as half marathoners and full marathoners. And I love this. So this is going to slide into the first point on why nutrition is so vitally important for ultra runners, both during training and during races. And number one is that fueling, how you fuel the tank and how much you fuel the tank, is going to very much impact your performance, not only day to day, but on race day as well. And with that, we need to have the best health possible and the best recovery possible. If our bones and our connective tissue and our muscles aren't recovering well, and if our immune system's not recovering well, don't even think about running. Don't even think about making positive adaptations day to day, week to week, month to month. It's not going to happen. So we need to understand how to fuel accordingly. Next, speaking in terms of ultras, and we're just going to say for the intensive purposes of this video, 50K races up to 100-mile races, these are going to demand extreme energy output. We know that with road running or treadmill running, something that's relatively flat, climate control, maybe have a little bit of wind outside, maybe have a little bit of a hill that you're running up and down, maybe there's some sort of inclement weather involved. In general, road running and treadmill running is going to demand around 100 calories per mile. It's going to be a little less for the lighter people and for the folks who are very, very in shape. And it's going to be a little bit more for the folks who are maybe not as in shape or even bigger. So it takes around 100 calories in order for you to run 1 mile. But for all of you trail runners and ultra runners out there, you'd know that like the fun of running an ultra is that it's going to be on some insane trail in some weird state that you've never been to, and there's going to be hills and there's going to be rocks and roots and streams. It's going to be in the dead of summer, in the dead of winter. Basically, you know, it's not going to be a 100 calories per mile. It's going to take 150, 200, 250 calories depending on what leg of the race you're in. I've run races before where there's like 2 or 3 miles of a flat section, then you're just straight up going uphill for 2 or 3 miles, then going down for 2 or 3 miles, then like traversing a stream where you got to hold on to a rope and then go back up again. So the caloric expenditure is insane when running ultras depending on where the race is and the weather involved. And if you have a water pack on you, it's absolutely nuts. So the main thing here is that if you're running a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race, It might take, and let's just say that average calories around 150 calories to run 1 mile. It can take around 7,500 calories to run a 50-mile race and upwards of 15,000 calories to run a 100-mile race. Of course, these are estimates. It's not going to be perfectly on the dot, but the main thing here is I'm trying to sell you on this idea that nutrition is incredibly, incredibly important to not only get you to the starting line, but to also get you from the starting line to the finish line. And if you have inadequate nutrition and you're not giving yourself the necessary calories, both in quantity and in quality, you could bonk and just not finish. You could have crazy stomach cramps. And for anyone out there who's ever run ultras, you know that like there's 100 different variables which could all go wrong, and a lot of them are GI based, either coming out of this end or coming out of the other end, and it's really difficult to deal with sometimes, and just overall GI issues. So you need to dial in your nutrition if you're going to run and finish an ultra. Alrighty, let's get on into the daily nutrition for elite ultramarathoners. So as you'd expect, if you're constantly running ultramarathons, you might be putting in 50-mile weeks, 100-mile weeks, 200-mile weeks, anything like that. So all these folks are going to need a high energy intake, anywhere from 3,500 calories to 5,000 calories, or maybe even higher. On some of my days, I was doing around 4,500 to 5,000 a day. And on some of the days when I do a half marathon in the morning and a half marathon at night, maybe a training session in the middle of the day, that'd be on like a Wednesday, I do a marathon a day, I would easily eat 5,000 or 6,000 calories. So the energy intake needs to be there. This isn't, and the thing is, their macronutrient breakdown isn't going to be all that different from that of general population. So still consuming around 50 to 60, maybe even 70% of your diet coming from carbohydrates, and mainly things like whole grains, fruits, veggies, and starchy carbohydrates are going to be your best friend. Second, with protein, again, having like a minimum of 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein per day is going to be phenomenal. And that shouldn't be too difficult to do, because if you're eating a relatively healthy diet and you're eating 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories, you're just going to get the protein along with the foods you're eating. And lastly, with the fats, these ultramarathoners are going to need the mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, aka the healthy fats, to just sustain cognitive function, hormonal health, decreasing inflammation. They need the healthy fats. Throw out the pizza and the burgers and all the saturated fats and just take in the avocados, the oils, the nuts and seeds. Really, really important. And further on this, one rule that I always had for myself and I have for all of my clients is always have food on you for snacks. If you're an ultra runner and you're running all these miles and maybe you do some cross training with lifting, biking, swimming, never go hungry. You should always be getting ready for a workout and then recovering from a workout, getting ready for a workout, recovering from a workout. It's this time and again which is going to produce wonderful results. And lastly on this, with daily nutrition and training, is hydration and electrolytes. There's no way that you're going to put in 100-mile weeks without staying hydrated. You need the water, you need the electrolytes. Even things like sports drinks and milk are going to help you just stay healthy and not dehydrated. Need I say more on that? Awesome. Some supplements which are often used during training. And these are some pretty common science-backed supplements. First off, we have caffeine. I know that when I was doing 2-a-days and sometimes 3-a-days, if I was throwing in a lift, I would always have caffeine before each workout. One at 3:30 in the morning, one around noon, and one around 4 or 5 p.m. Even if it's just like 1 cup of coffee or half a cup of coffee, having 2 or 3 cups of coffee throughout the day is really not that bad for you. If you're doing your homework, if you're exercising, if you're eating healthy, if you're recovering. So caffeine is going to be huge, especially if you're doing 2-a-days and 3-a-days. Second, electrolyte mixes. We had detailed before the various sports supplements, the various sports drinks you can have just to make sure you are nice and hydrated. Number 3 is creatine, and more specifically creatine monohydrate. This is going to be great for neuroprotective. This is going to have great neuroprotective effects, great for strength and recovery. We can talk like crazy about creatine and why you can need that. Some ultra runners like beta-alanine, and beta-alanine is really, really great at buffering acidity and if an ultra runner is very much doing tempo work and threshold work, and they are getting into that like zone 4, zone 5 region where lactate and hydrogen ions build up, beta alanine can really help buffer the acidity to help them just keep going for longer and longer. And the last supplement can be carbohydrate powders, anything with like glucose and fructose put together in order to sustain long runs and long workouts without any bonking. Awesome. Now on for some race day nutritional strategies. And for any ultra marathon, whether it's a 50K, 50 mile, 100 mile, 24 hour, whatever it is you're doing, the best practices, all research based, is to get in anywhere from 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And this is going to be really great if you can get this from a combination of liquid fueling, so different carbohydrate drinks and sports drinks, as well as solid foods. And getting in things like bananas, oatmeal, potatoes, watermelon. Really, really great to mix up the carbohydrate sources. One huge strategy with respect to nutrition on race day is start fueling early and don't wait until you're hungry. I used to set a timer on my watch at either 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and every 30 to 45 minutes it would go off and off and off and off and off again. And for some of the 24-hour races, it got really annoying, but I always had food in hand, and like some of those races I would never bonk. So make sure as you're constantly putting out the energy, when you're burning off 5, 6, 7, 800 calories an hour, you're also taking that back in. And lastly, do not forget about the electrolyte drinks. My best races always came out when I would only drink electrolyte drinks like Gatorade Zero and other 0-calorie sports drinks, just to make sure that I had all of my electrolytes, all of my hydration, and I'd add food on top of it just to be safe and to stay out of the hospital. Awesome. Next, for some real world fueling strategies. So Jim Walmsley is, I don't know, probably still the world record holder for the Western States race and a bunch of other races. He may have won UTMB recently, but this guy's everywhere. He's probably the GOAT for the guys. He typically has a mixture of gels and tailwind every 30 minutes. And when this guy's going out and crushing 100-mile races, he needs to stay consistent with his calories. Courtney Dauwalter also, she is like the undisputed GOAT of ultra running. She's amazing. She likes sports drinks, potatoes, candy, things like that on a pretty consistent basis. And if you've ever seen her social media, she's also big into brushing her teeth, which is also great too, because all the candy and sports drinks, it's going to get your teeth all sugared up. Some elites also do really, really well with just real food at aid stations. Zach Bitter, who had like the 100-mile world record and the 24-hour world record, he was big on Coca-Cola and Oreos. I heard him talk about in a podcast. Other people do awesome with potatoes dipped in salt, which is one of my personal favorites, watermelon dipped in salt, which is another one of my favorites, as well as broth, peanut butter and jelly, and any other sort of Twizzler or candy. And lastly, if you're thinking about how can some folks eat and run at the same time, you're going to have to train your gut or your GI system just as well as you train your legs. You need to train to eat along the way. If you want to run 50 miles, if you want to run 100 miles, you're going to need the calories. So train your gut, please, ahead of time. With respect to hydration and electrolytes, this video would not be complete without talking about that. So for managing fluids on the run, it would be best to have 1 or 2 bottles with you, like in hand, or have a hydration pack on your back. Do your best to have around 16 to 20 ounces of fluids per hour, whether that's a mixture of water and then electrolytes. That's going to help you just not get dehydrated and not fall behind. Do your best to have around 500 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per hour, depending on your sweat rate, depending on the climate, depending on the weather conditions. If you're a heavy sweater, you're going to need more salt, so you can really not get hyponatremia, which is an excessive loss of salt. So really make sure to get in those electrolyte drinks around 16 to 20 ounces per hour, or just go off of your internal thirst mechanisms. What to avoid? So some common nutrition mistakes along the ultra circuit. So skipping fuel early during the race. We discussed that the last thing you want to do is bonk early. Some of my worst races was when I was like when I had nerves and jitteriness and I didn't eat for the first 10 or 20 miles. And then from there I just bonked, and it was like really, really, really hard to just keep going and keep my mind mentally sharp for the 50 miles or 100 miles. Do not try new foods on race day. Whatever you do, this is the quickest way to just ruin months or even years of training. Don't try new foods on race day. Even if you want to bring your own foods in your pockets, within your bag, within your drop bags, do that. But do not, please, by any means, try anything new on race day. Don't go to that aid station and go, oh, that looks nice, and then just throw it up a half mile later. Do not do that. Also, then, number 3, do not rely on just water. As we had talked about, getting hyponatremia, which is a flushing out of all the sodium, is sometimes even worse than just dehydration itself. So make sure to get in all of the electrolytes. And then also, don't neglect protein, don't neglect micronutrients. A lot of ultrarunners think, or budding ultrarunners think, that if the fire is burning hot enough that you can throw whatever fuel and you'll just keep using it and using it and using it. You can't be eating junk foods, all the refined carbohydrates and saturated fats. If you want to just continue to get stronger and more efficient and healthier, you're going to need protein and micronutrients. So make sure to also eat healthfully. Awesome. TLDR. Eat early, eat often, and train your gut. Simple as that. How to run an ultra, right? So don't guess. Plan your nutrition like you plan your training. If you know that you need to run 10 miles a day or even 20 miles a day or even more, if you have the mileage and the cross training and the stretching all set out, make sure you do the same with your nutrition so that you're always feeling good. You're never running low on glycogen. You're never running low on amino acids, and you're never running low on hydration. Carbs are going to be your fuel source. There is no getting around that. And electrolytes are just your insurance policy to make sure you don't get dehydrated and you can stay out of trouble. During your training, as you're training your legs and training your body for the race, also train your nutrition, train your gut. Make sure you come into the race with a steel stomach or a stomach of iron to make sure that you're ready to rock and roll on race day. Support your recovery with enough protein and total calories to make sure that over the course of the 16 weeks or 20 weeks or however long your training process is, you continue to get stronger and healthier. And if you're racing often, make sure what you're eating between races, both before, during, and after, is nice and healthy. We want to make sure that you're making positive adaptations and you're not stuffing your face with some garbage. You want to keep getting better all the time. Awesome. And with that, I do want to thank you for tuning in to another episode. I do hope you enjoyed this one. There's so many different episodes and topics we can talk about with respect to ultra running and fueling that I cannot wait to do in the future. And so you do not miss, please like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who needs to hear this. And scroll on down and subscribe to both my Substack and my Instagram so you will not miss any of the deep dives in nutrition, physiology, endurance, strength conditioning, all the exercise science stuff. So if you haven't yet run today or haven't yet lifted, go and do that because I will as well. And I'll catch you on the next episode.